Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier. Race number 7 on Kentucky Oaks Friday is the Grade 2 Alysheba Stakes, going 1 1/16 miles for some very nice handicap horses. Let's take a look at this field. Matt, the morning line favorite at 8-5, and deservedly so, is McKenzie for Baffert and Smith. And when he is right, he is one of the better horses in the country.
Yeah, plain and simple, he really is. And you look and see, he's always been cut out to be a nice horse. He's earned nothing less than a 92 buyer throughout his career. Well, not including the Breeders' Cup Classic, but that was a bit of a disaster all by itself. This horse is just rock solid. I think he shows up, he earns his low 100 buyer speed figure. To be honest with you, I like the turn back in distance. There's a part of me that's wondering that as these distances continue to get longer, not that he was embarrassed in the big cap most recently at 10 furlongs, but I feel like the longer we go, I think he gets slightly more vulnerable. And at these shorter distances, I just think he's rock solid.
I agree. He's a Grade 1 winner at distances between 7 and 1 1/8 miles, but I like him better at this 1 1/16 distance. It just seems to hit him right between the eyes. And I'm not going to say that the Breeders' Cup Classic flop was a result of him not liking Churchill Downs. I think it was because he was chasing a very fast pace against some very good horses at a distance that was too far for him. Add in a bullet workout over the Churchill surface on April the 27th, and a nice inside post where he can work out a ground-saving pace-tracking trip, and he's simply the horse to beat.
Yeah, he is, and I guess that's the knock with a horse like this. He's 8-5 on the line. I expect him to be odds on, maybe in that 4-5 range when it's all said and done. But I do think he's the most likely winner in this race.
Let's throw up the pace projector from Timeform US, and let's see where Timeform US has the field as they pass the half-mile pole. And our old friend, the number 3, Prime Attraction, is expected to be setting the pace along with the horse on the far outside. That is the number 11, Copper Bullet. Let's begin with Prime Attraction, who last time out was running in the big cap off of a layoff. Maybe that was too big of an ask, but I thought he had a pretty easy trip on the lead. They weren't going very fast, and he just didn't have it late in the game. I thought he ran one of his better races last year over this surface in the Clark, going 1 1/8 miles. When he feels like running, he runs a good race, but I'm not sure he's completely trustworthy. He hasn't won in a long time.
Yeah, I have to agree with all that, and you're right about the big cap. Off the layoff, maybe it was a little bit of a lofty ask, but at the same time, he got a pretty cushy setup in there, out there cutting out relatively soft fractions. Timeform had the internal splits color-coded blue. I didn't see much of an excuse that day. Maybe second off the bench, he's tighter, and you're right. He got over the Churchill strip pretty well last fall.
Copper Bullet was a very good 2-year-old. Unfortunately, he missed most of his 3-year-old campaign due to injury. His 4-year-old debut was a rock-solid performance in the Grade 3 Razorback Handicap. At this distance, his first time around 2 turns against the streaking Coal Front, he kind of bombed last time out in the New Orleans Handicap. I think 1 1/8 miles is a little bit far for that horse, and I think that track configuration with the long stretch also doesn't work to his favor. So cutting back to 1 1/16 miles and showing speed in here, I'm expecting an improved performance.
I'd expect a better effort, too. And like you say, he ran really well in that run 2 starts back. To be honest, I've never really looked at him as a 2-turn kind of horse. So there's just sort of the kind of pie-in-the-sky thought for me going forward that if he runs well enough here, I'd like to see them turn him back for the Met Mile here in about 5 weeks' time, just simply because I think he's going to be better off going slightly shorter distances.
Like Copper Bullet, the number 2, Tom's D'Etat, has missed a significant amount of time with injury in his career, but he came back firing towards the end of 2018 with 2 impressive open lengths victories, which propelled him into the Pegasus World Cup, and he just didn't run very well that day. Maybe it was the sloppy track, maybe it was simply too much too soon off of the layoff, but this horse can trip out. He's run very well at Churchill Downs in the past, and he has at least one figure that suggests he can run with these horses.
The difficult thing for me to assess with Tom's D'Etat is how good is he actually, because that was always the thing we didn't know leading into the Pegasus was he had done all these great things. Obviously, he's had some physical issues throughout his career, but he'd never really been tested. Then they threw him into the wolves against the horses like Accelerate, like City of Light, and he just didn't pass the test for one reason or the other. For me, I'm unsure. Was it because of the class hike that he didn't handle it, or did he just really hate the track at Gulfstream and he deserves another sort of mulligan?
I wonder if the 5 Bourbon Resolution is an example of a 4-year-old just coming to hand at the right time and is ready for another explosive move forward. He has won 3 out of his last 4 races, disqualified from one of them last summer from purse money. Last time out in the Grade 3 Ben Ali, he had to prove that he could get the 1 1/8 miles. He did. He had to prove that he could run a figure. He finally did, running a 96. Let's be honest, though. He's taking a big step up in class from that race to this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a far cry for the nonethelesses of the world and the third days of the world as opposed to the McKinseys and some of these other big names that are in a spot like this. To me, he's the kind of horse. Look, 15-1. I'm not going to knock his price. He needs to prove though that he actually belongs at this caliber of company.
It's nice to see your son, the 6 Instilled Regard, back in action. He had a big 2-year-old and 3-year-old campaign, 4th in the Kentucky Derby last year. Then he went to the sidelines, and it's just been kind of a weird campaign since then. Pennsylvania Derby was a tough ask. First time Chad, first time off the long layoff, taking on McKinsey. He did not run well at all. I understand the turf races because he has some turf pedigree. Now we're running him back on the dirt after getting beat at 2-5. Here's a Chad Brown formulator fact that might help Instilled Regard fans get involved. Past 4 years, older horses, turf to dirt, second off the layoff, 42% winners, 75% on the board, 258 ROI. And what I like is, at least on these turf races, he's shown some speed.
Well, I was going to say, it's going to be interesting to see where he is positioned because, like you say, in both of those grass races, he was much closer to the front end than he has been customarily on the dirt. Now, having said that, as well as I thought he ran in the Hollywood Derby, and look, the return effort, I'm not going to knock it. It was nothing more than a means to an end, probably. His races, from a speed figure standpoint on dirt, are better than his turf races are. And I think he's getting back to doing what he wants to do. Perhaps this distance is a little bit sharp. I think he may want a little bit more ground when it's all said and done, but I think he's got a big chance in here. I picked him second.
Casino Star, what a wonderful $25,000 claim by these connections. They've turned this horse into a stakes-placed runner. He just missed last time out in the 5th season over a wet track at this distance. He ran well that day. He earned a Beyer top. The problem is that 93 Beyer pales in comparison to those of the main contenders.
Yeah, if he can replicate that, he's probably trying to get a minor award in here. The other thing I'm concerned about is the running style for him. He's been 2 or 3 lengths off the pace in these most recent runs, but note that all of them have come with slow paces and slow fractions. So it makes me think that if things do go a little bit quicker here, how far back is he going to be? Is he going to be 4, 5, 6 lengths off? But at that point, I don't even think he's the best closer. Another
horse that's just been a super claim is the venerable 9-year-old, the number 7 Hawakam, who was taken for $15,000. Back in 2014, Wes Hawley has turned this horse into a graded stakes winner. In the 5th season, I don't really think he got the right setup over the wet track that day at Oaklawn, but I just can't find an excuse for his race 2 starts back. And we do recall his best race ever, the Razorback of 2018. He could not have had a better trip over a wet track.
No, and I guess that's the thing. I mean, there is some wet weather in the forecast Friday and Saturday. He would appreciate that, no question. I think kind of what you were alluding to. You look at these most recent runs, I'm starting to wonder if at 9 years old, maybe he just doesn't have the fastball anymore. I think he's one that if you're playing exotics, maybe you want to use him underneath. I would just be very surprised if he upset everyone here.
Despite the face value of the pedigree, the number 9 multiplier, who's by the factor out of a trippy mare, he is a true stayer. And you could argue a 1.16 is actually a little bit short for him. He's getting back to the dirt, and he does have credentials on the dirt, winner of the 2017 Illinois Derby. He's the kind of horse, though, that needs a little bit of pace up front, but I think his dirt outings are better than they look on paper. They're just not fast enough to contend with the top names in this race.
That's the tough thing for me. I agree. I don't think he's a bad dirt horse by any stretch. His dirt efforts thus far not good enough to run with the big boys in here. And to be honest, as decent as his dirt runs are, I still think he's better on grass.
Matt, do you think the 1 1/8 was just a bridge too far for Silver Dust last time out? He's been really solid at a 1 1/16, 1 mile distances, and he ran well in the New Orleans Handicap. Let's be honest, he finished ahead of Lone Sailor, who came back to just missed in the Oaklawn Handicap with a 97 Beyer speed figure. I think cutting back in distance with his tactical speed really should work out for him. My one concern is I just wasn't thrilled with those New Orleans races for older horses over the winter.
He feels like the kind of horse to me that when he's been sort of tested or thrown to better company, he just hasn't quite passed it. And you're right, the fairgrounds runs, especially for the older horses this winter, left a little bit something to be desired. I do think it's something to keep an eye on, though. You look at his Churchill Downs record, 2 for 5 and 4 for 5 in the money. If you're playing exotics, maybe he's one to use underneath.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Grade 2 Alysheba Stakes. You're not going with your son, Instilled Regard. I'm going with one of my progeny, the 8 Seeking the Soul, who I've loved ever since pretty much his career debut. He did not run well in the Dubai World Cup. I'm just willing to draw a line through that race. cross-country ship, no Lasix, fine. I thought he ran okay in the Pegasus World Cup, 2 starts back, going 1 1/8 miles, speed-friendly track, last down towards the inside, entering the turn, checked behind the tiring pace setter, second best to a very good horse in City of Light. Really liked his Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile at Churchill Downs, again, second best to City of Light after being steady it a bit on the far turn. And I think the Clark handicap, which was really the dull effort, was they kind of got a little greedy and they ran back 3 weeks after the Breeders' Cup. I think he kind of regressed off of that effort. He likes Churchill Downs. I like him at this slightly shorter distance at 1 1/16 miles, and he certainly has races.
Oh, he absolutely has races. His best race, you could make the argument, is better than McKenzie's best race in certain instances. And I agree with you. Churchill Downs, I think this works for him. This is the track that he's done some of his best work over. Draw a line through Dubai. He ran a bang-up race in the Pegasus World Cup. I think this 1 1/16 is better for him. I do wonder, and I'd like to see at some point if they get him back to a one-turn mile, because those 2 runs that he ran in the ACAC and the Breeders' Cup, I think those are 2 of his better races he's ever run in his entire career. Doesn't mean he can't win a race like this. I think he's a primetime player. I picked him 3rd.
But you're going with McKenzie on top, and as we said in the open, he's one of the better older horses in the entire country. And a win here, a good performance here, it gives Baffert a lot of options. Turn back to the Met Mile, continue to stretch him out, and the trip should be right for him as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's got some versatility. If for some reason the pace is slow, he can go. If they go, he can sit in just behind. I don't think this distance is an issue, and I agree with you. Again, I would just like to see them with a good effort here. Let's try a one-turn mile and try to change something up, because I'm not sold that he's 1 1/4 miles or even 1 1/8 miles. He's one at it, but I think he's better going these shorter distances.
Give me numbers in the Alysheba.
1, 6, 8, and 2.
I'm going to go 8, 1, and 5. I'm going to try to get the improving and upwardly mobile Bourbon Resolution into the single race exotics. Approximate post time for race number 7 on Kentucky Oaks Friday is 2 o'clock Eastern. Good luck.